name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be talking about all of the books that I read during the month of March. So during the month of March, I read 9 books and I finished 8 of the books. So let's go ahead and start with the very first book that I did not finish. So the first and only book that, oh, the UPS man is here. Oh my God, I know that's my package. I know it, I know it because I live here. I'm so excited. Can you hear her? Oh God, she's looking up at me. It's like the most human interaction I've had all day. I'm so excited about it. Okay, cool. So the only book that I did not complete this month was Priory of the Orange Tree, and this is by Samantha Shannon. I'm about halfway through right now, and I don't know if I'll actually be able to finish next month because this book isn't on my TBR, and I'm doing the Owls Readathon. But I am really excited to kind of finish this and see where Samantha Shannon leads us. So this is an adult fantasy. It's set in a place where there are queendoms instead of kingdoms. So I feel like Samantha Shannon is really taking her time in doing a lot of world building, and there is a ton of world building and a ton of character development happening right now. But I do recommend this book if you are interested in adult fantasies, specifically with female-female relationships and with dragons. On to the books that I actually finished. The first book I want to talk about that I finished is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I read this book with Star, one of my friends. So this book is about a girl named Alina who is an orphan, and she has a best friend named Mal. Once it's discovered that she has powers and that she is what they call a Grisha, she's actually whisked away by the Darkling, and he decides that he is going to make sure that she really learns how to control her powers because she can really help the kingdom. I thought Leigh Bardugo did like an amazing job, so I gave this book a 4 stars. The next book that I read was We Are Okay, and this is by Nina Lacour. You have to know going into this that this is a very, very, very sad book. So this is about a girl named Marin. Her mother died when she was very, very young, and she doesn't remember her mother at all. So she's grown up her whole life with her grandfather. But after his death, she really can't seem to take her life anymore. So she moves to New York City to go to college a couple weeks early and kind of cuts off all contact with all of her friends. She feels really, really alone, and she's basically just struggling to kind of keep afloat and to make sense of her life. So I feel like isolation is definitely a huge topic in this book, along with grief. I thought it was really, really beautifully written, and I thought that there was a lot of interesting dynamics that the author played with, specifically with like friends to lovers. So this is my favorite quote from the entire book. I thought it was so beautiful, and it says, "I hope you don't get in trouble," I said. "But how could trouble find us? We were miraculous. We were beach creatures. We had treasures in our pockets and each other on our skin." And that's so representative of like how Nina Lacour writes. Everything in here is lyrical without being overly done. Like, I wouldn't call her prose flowery, but I would say it's lyrical in the sense that there are these little moments of observation of life where Nina Lacour really turns a beautiful feeling into almost like a stanza poem. You read it and you're just like, wow, that is, I mean, I want that tattooed somewhere on my body. If you get sad easily while reading and you maybe want something that's gonna be like happier, don't go for this book, because this book is gonna make you sad. But if you are okay with like reading super sad stuff and you want something beautiful and a 5 out of 5 stars, I would so recommend this because it was so good. Okay, so the next book that I have here is In an Absent Dream by Shauna Maguire, and I love this book so much. For me personally, there's no way I was giving this less than a 5 star. I loved it so much. If you're unfamiliar with Shauna Maguire's Wayward Children series, essentially it's just about kids who go off into portal fantasies, and then when they come back, they go to this like school, and the school helps them adjust to reality into this world. That's the first book, which is called Every Heart a Doorway. And then the rest of the little novellas that kind of follow are all following specific stories from all of those children from the Every Heart a Doorway series. And this one in particular followed a girl named Lundy. Lundy actually was the counselor, I believe, in the first book, which was Every Heart a Doorway. So we're following her story and like her journey basically to the Goblin Market. And you learn all about it, and you learn all about her friends, and you learn all about how she ended up at the Wayward School, which was, it's not even called the Wayward School. It's the one by Eleanor West, and I always call it the Wayward School. I don't know what it's called. I love that these are little novellas too, because it feels like the reader only gets to peek into the world. Whereas if you're reading a full text novel, Alice in Wonderland on Wonderland, or Peter Pan, and you're reading all about Neverland, you really feel like you get to be in Wonderland with Alice and you get to be in Neverland with Peter Pan. These are short, and I think that there's a reason. I think Shauna Maguire wants you to feel almost like you're looking at the world through a window. In Every Heart a Doorway, it's very, very clear that no one can go into these worlds unless these worlds invite you. They're all very exclusive. For example, like Peter, who was king of Narnia, he could never make it in Wonderland. That's not his world. So Wonderland isn't going to like seek him out specifically. And I like the length of these because I feel like they're almost used as a literary device by Shauna Maguire. I feel like she's showing the reader the world and the story, but you always feel like you're kind of kept at an arm's length away. Like you're not really invited to the world, you're just invited to peer at the world. And I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just me reading too much into it, but I like that they're windows. I like that I feel like I'm an outsider kind of peering in it. It makes it feel almost more real to me. I loved it. I love the length. I love the story. I loved everything about it. 5 out of 5 stars. The next adult that I have here is Special Topics in Calamity Physics, and this is by Marisha Pessl. Now, okay, here we go. This book did something that no book has ever really done to me before. I was this close to DNFing it for almost 200 pages. And then after a certain point, it became apparent that there was no way that I was gonna give this less than 5 stars. And that's never happened to me in my I've never gone from wanting to DNF a book to all of a sudden thinking that it was like brilliant and one of the best books that I've ever read. It's never happened to me. This book is about a girl named Blue. Blue is very, very reminiscent of Rory Gilmore. You'll hear a lot of people say that when they're talking about this book, and it's very true. She is constantly referencing things, almost like this book is less of a story and more of an analytical paper. That's one of the reasons why it kind of felt like I wanted to DNF it. I felt like I wasn't really connecting to the writing style as well. She would talk about how somebody looked at her wrong, and then she would say, kind of like this actor from this movie, see page 32. I would say on every single page, there was at least 2 to 3 reference points. And it was just, it like started to grind down on my little reader's heart. At first, I thought it was really endearing. I was like, okay, I'm kind of seeing like who this girl is. She's very smart. She's very witty. She doesn't miss anything. And then after a while, I was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm not enjoying it. Like, I get it. They make her sound kind of almost pretentious. But all I will say is that everything is kind of for a reason. You don't see that until the very end. The basic premise of this book, though, is it's about a girl named Blue who's very, very smart. She meets this charismatic teacher, this elite, very snooty group of students. You know that the teacher is going to die and that she's going to try to figure out why. The twist had me shook. I did not see that coming. It took me a month and a half to read this much because it was ridiculous. Like, to me, it was really slow. And then it took me one day to read this, like about that much, because it was just, the pacing was so fast and I needed to know what was happening. This is absolutely a 5 out of 5 stars. I recommend it to people who don't mind slower paced books, who don't mind kind of like a stream of consciousness feel. Also, I feel like it really exposed me to a lot of different literary devices that I was not specifically like well versed in. I've never read stream of consciousness before. I've never read a book written almost like a critical essay before. I thought that was really interesting. 5 out of 5 stars, really, really great. Okay, next we've got 2 middle grades. So the first middle grade that I want to talk about is Snow and Rose, and this is by Emily Winfield Martin. I thought that this book was so incredibly charming. My favorite part for sure are all of the illustrations. I thought that the illustrations were insanely beautiful. And then even like the book naked is so pretty. Like, look at it without the dust jacket. That's so pretty. And it's just about Snow White and Rose Red. I recommend this for people who love fairy tales because I don't think that this read necessarily like a regular plot in the sense that it's like very, very fast paced and there's like a definitive problem and things. There was a problem that like spanned through everything, but it was more like every chapter was a mini fairy tale. Every chapter had like a very small light, whimsical thing that happened to it. And I would say that this was a slower paced book in the sense that it reads genuinely just like a bedtime fairy tale. I thought that this would be perfect kind of around like winter time. It feels much more like a cozy read. I feel like kids would really love this to be read to them personally. Like it felt like a bedtime story type of a book. So if you like quiet, cute, cozy reads, you're gonna like this. Definitely a 4-star for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was The Lighthouse Between Worlds, and this is by Melanie Crowder. This book is about a boy named Griffin, and Griffin lives with his father who runs a lighthouse. One night there is an alarm that sounds and his father gets very, very flustered. All of a sudden he is kind of swept up into the lighthouse and sucked in, and a lighthouse guild appear and they take Griffin away. The lighthouse is kind of like a portal to other worlds. Now, when I first picked up this book and heard about the premise, I thought that this was going to be a portal fantasy type thing, almost like the Every Heart a Doorway series. But Melanie Crowder did a really interesting job in twisting it so that you're almost like led to believe as the reader that it's going to be a little bit of a fantasy, but then it turns out that it's more like a science fiction, which I thought was really interesting and I wasn't expecting at all. I recommend this book specifically for people who love science fiction. If you loved A Wrinkle in Time, if you love reading about things kind of along the same lines as like the multiverse, but you want it in more of like a fantastical element, I would recommend this for you. And finally, I have 2 graphic novels. So the first one is of course another 5-star, just handing them out like candy on Halloween, and that is The Tea Dragon Society, and that is by Katie O'Neill. It's about this girl who discovers a dragon one day, and it's like a miniature dragon. She returns the dragon back to its owner, and its owner says that it's a tea dragon, which means that it grows tea leaves kind of like on its head and everything, almost like a flower. Once Greta returns the dragon, she also meets this other girl who doesn't remember her name. Both Greta and this girl kind of developing a little bit of a friendship and a relationship. It's really, really adorable. I highly recommend it. It was completely worth the read. 5 out of 5 stars for me. And it was just really, really sweet. I love this book so much. The last book that I read is Nightlights, and this is by Lorena Alvarez. I would honestly buy any book that she illustrates or writes just because I am such a fan of her art style. This book is about a girl named Sandy, and Sandy, every single night before she goes to sleep, there are like little lights that kind of appear in her room, and she can bring them back to life through her drawings. I felt like the plot of this was just a tiny bit rushed for me. I felt like the problem of it was rushed a little bit, and I felt like how everything wrapped up was also rushed just a tiny little bit. Having said that, I would still highly recommend this, especially to people who love graphic novels and love beautiful stories. I think you're really gonna like this. To me, it was a 3-star, and I thought it was really good. So that's it for everything that I read during the month of March. I am so excited for the Owls Readathon that of course I had to participate and make a TBR, and I'm really gonna try to push myself. So we'll see how much I can actually read in the month of April. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until next time, book lovers, please keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will talk to you later. Bye!